Welcome Indian Minister of Foreign Affairs Jaishankar and German Minister of Foreign Affairs Mr. Wadephul. Yes, I've been practicing. Our topic this afternoon is navigating uncertainty in a world in disarray. These are pretty dramatic words that we have here, and I was wondering whether I might start by getting your reaction to this morning's speech by Secretary Rubio, and whether you think that it's added or reduced a little bit of uncertainty. Minister Wadephul.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everybody. Yes, this was, I would really admit, this was the speech I expected from Secretary Rubio. I think both of us know him for a longer time. We know where he is. We know that he's a true partner. We know, especially with regard to the congressional delegation we can welcome here in Berlin, that we have really true partners in the United States of America. So I would really say we have, of course, a common ground. We have a big story made in history. He was looking back and saying, okay, we overcame the whole situation in the Cold War. The Iron Curtain fell. Germany was reunited, and this is also the root cause of all of that was that we had a strong position that the United States were with us, were with Germany, and this was, I would really say, the precondition for everything. And the most important sentence for me was, let's do it again. So he was looking forward. This is good. This can be, again, a success story. Both of us have to contribute to it. We have our positions. Sometimes we differ. But I would also say, if we talk about uncertainties, besides this, for Germany and for Europe, it's absolutely clear. We need new global partners. As I'm sitting here next to my friend Jaish, I would say India is one of the most important partners for Germany. We will come to it later on, I assume, but this is absolutely clear. Europe has really actively to seek for new global partners who share our values, firstly, and of course, who share our interests. And as far as I see, there's really a readiness. There are a lot of countries interested in having kind of partnership with that, not a concrete alliance as NATO is, but also a partnership. So this is what we are striving for.
I want to come back to that point, but let me get your reaction first, Minister.
Well,
when you heard this point.
Yes. To be fair, I was just coming in. I was just landing in at that time. I listened to parts of that speech.
That is a very diplomatic answer.
No, but it happens to be true. So it happens to be true. But no, but look, my sense of the parts I heard was that he was capturing both the change as well as a degree of continuity and a degree of reassurance. I mean, that was how I heard it, which was not change as something which was a very abrupt, a complete departure from everything, but really making the point that, look, a lot of things need to reflect the transformations which are underway, and that the US itself had changed and was going to approach a lot of issues and organizations and situations differently from the past. So I mean, to me, there was both sides of it, the continuity side and the change side. And frankly, in many ways, I think, as Johann said, it conforms to what I've heard from Secretary Rubio over the last year.
I think, given all the sessions that we've had so far at Munich, the theme is that we are going into some new world order. I wonder whether you could both define it a little bit for me, but also, how do you navigate it, Minister Wadephul?
I would still say, and this was also, I would say, a very clear message from Secretary Rubio, that we have to beware and we have to stay and stick to our international rules-based order, which is, of course, in first line, the United Nations. This is our board of peace, and we keep it like that. We have, of course, to reform it. We have to make it more effective, as Rubio said this morning. And of course, UN has to deliver and not only to stand at the sidelines. And we are absolutely clear. We are supporting the UN80 process. We as G4 alliance, together with Brazil and Japan, are very much in favor of giving the United Nations a face of the 21st century. And not only reflecting what was after the Second World War. So this is still the framework we are working in. And of course, as I said before, besides these clear alliances we do have, we are a member of the European Union, we are a member of NATO. We are looking for global partners with whom we want to work more concretely, more effective, more closely together. And India is a very best example for that. And so that was a deeper reason that Germany was very, very active in bringing the free trade agreement to a success.
So this must be music to your ears, but then you've been hearing for many, many years that there has to be a reform of the UN, and particularly a reform of the UN Security Council. Do you think that that is a more viable or a more likely outcome?
I think it's a more urgent outcome, urgently needed outcome. But I'd like to kind of walk back a little bit to your question to Johann. You know, look, all said and done, we've had an order, we still have an order. It's messy, it's imperfect, it has a lot of room for betterment, but it's still there, you know. And we've seen that change happening. I mean, at one level, some parts of it have been very gradual and progressive. But the last 5 years, there have been a series of shocks which have accelerated that. I think COVID was a shock. The conflict in Ukraine was a shock. What's happening in the Middle East was a shock. So, even in Europe, some years ago, Brexit was a shock. Now the change in the stance of the United States, I think, as the most powerful country, and the rise of China and the impact that it's had on international systems and practices. I think all of this, it's like it's building. And suddenly the cumulative impact of that is hitting us all. So we are today, it's not, I know the last year has been a very dramatic year, but I would still argue it's not just last year. It's really been building over the last decade, particularly over the last 5 years. And we don't have an answer. I mean, what we are seeing is the impact of it on the international system. And now we are saying, okay, how does it take the shock? What will happen? It will take time. But to the extent I can give you a kind of an analytical concept to deal with it, I would say, its world is heading towards greater multipolarity, that there will be many more independent or autonomous centers of decision making. Probably the most interesting for many of us is Europe, because we have seen in some ways a sort of a strategic reawakening of Europe in the last few years. So what Europe does with itself, how does Europe relate to others, is very important. So this, in that context for us, when we looked at all the big polls, I think the one which was most under-realized was our relationship with Europe. And within Europe, in fact, in many ways, our relationship with Germany. And if I were to say what has changed in the recent past, we've had really two big back-to-back events in India. The visit of Chancellor Merz. I think it was his first visit to Asia. And then the India-Europe FTA, which President von der Leyen described as the mother of all deals. So I think the two of them actually are creating a new landscape between us. And we hope to take it forward. But I would just add one last point that, the relationships don't happen just by visits and agreements and headline news or even discussions here. They need a lot of comfort building. At different levels in the systems, people need to know each other, call each other, discuss with each other, throw ideas at each other. And we need India and Europe and India and Germany to work to build that level of comfort, which I think is eminently feasible. And that's really what I see as the task before us.
Do you think that if, Minister Wadephul, do you think that 2-3 years ago, you would not have had such a deepening relationship with India? And to what extent is this relationship part of the way that you are thinking about China?
No, to be honest, 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have expected that we would come to that very level of cooperation between us and between the European Union and India as well. As Jaish correctly said, we're just building up a new center of sovereignty here in Europe. And of course, he referred to the shocks we had in the last years. And of course, the last one was only Greenland. Before that, of course, the Russian war of aggression and so on and so on. We all remember that. And the conclusion from our side was that really we have to bring Europe to a new level in the decision-making process, to come to a qualified majority voting, to be really able to act when it comes to foreign policy. And also with regard to our enlargement process, the Chancellor just yesterday answered to a question from the Western Balkans that we are very open to the enlargement process. We are not only looking to the Western Balkans, but perhaps also to other countries, not only in the East, but also perhaps in the North. So, and India, of course, was always, I would say, on our radar, but it was, we oversaw sometimes the opportunities which are laying ahead. And when we realized that, I think we made steps forward, and we know each other for some times, not only we personally, but also our governments. And this is along the line which also former governments in Germany took. And for that very reason, there was a common ground. And I would like to quote my friend Jaish with a very important sentence, which makes perhaps clear. And he said, quote unquote, "Predictability today carries a huge premium in global politics." And this is so true. And I think it needed these shocks that we were aware that we know where India is and that you are predictable and that we trust you, and vice versa perhaps. And so this initiated what happened. And this, of course, makes a categorical difference to China. We are both democracies. We have freedom of speech. We have rule of law. And that, of course, means really a lot for us. And so India is a very different partner to us compared to China.
Mr. Jaishankar, when one of your themes has been strategic autonomy. Following the recent agreement with the US, the trade agreement, where you are now forced to wean Russia off of, wean India off of Russian oil, does that not impact your strategic autonomy? Because that's how you were explaining it in the past.
No, look, I think one, we are very much wedded to strategic autonomy because it's very much a part of our history and our evolution. And it's.
But can you exercise the strategic autonomy today as much as you want?
No, well, we do, and we've always done. I think, it's something which is which is very deep, and it's something which cuts across the political spectrum as well. Where the energy issues are concerned, look, this is today a complex market. I think oil companies in India, as in Europe, as probably in other parts of the world, look at availability, look at costs, look at risks, and take the decisions that they feel is in the best interest. So I would say, and we have a position which on that. So I don't want to rehash the polemics of that. I think that phase has passed. Today, when coming to Munich, very honestly, I'm kind of coming here in the afterglow of an India-EU FTA and a very successful visit of Chancellor Merz. So I would rather look. We are not in 22, we are not in 23, we are not even in 25. So many things are changing, and so many of us are doing our calculations and recalculations. It's important for us to say, what are the touch points, what are the common grounds, where is it we can strengthen each other? We would not, we talk to each other quite often. We would not necessarily agree on everything, but I do believe that by doing that, and if there is an inclination to find common ground and overlaps, that would happen. But if the bottom line of your question is, would I remain independent-minded and make my decisions, and would I make choices which sometimes may not agree with your thinking or his thinking or somebody else's thinking out there? Yes, it can happen.
This is a question for both of you. Is this new world order that's emerging one in which there are coalitions that get formed for specific issues, whether sometimes it works for trade, sometimes, and this is the sort of the Mark Carney view of the future?
I would say yes. Coalition is perhaps a good phrase, not alliances, but specific coalitions, and of course that includes this is not only for one sector. You cannot have a coalition only orientated perhaps on the economic sector if you have not a common understanding, a basic understanding on other sectors as well. So we are also cooperating on the defense sector very closely. We are cooperating when it comes to build resilience against climate change. We are cooperating when it comes to defending democracies and all these international rules-based standards and so on. So this is I would say a new world, a good new world is ahead, is achievable. Of course, we have to strengthen our efforts. The EU has to be to become capable to be effective on the world stage. We're working on that, as I just said. But for Germany, it's absolutely clear that we are looking beyond Europe, and not only over the Atlantic Ocean to the west. Where are our partners? Where are possible partners on other continents? And we are finding them. This is the fortunate situation we're in.
This has often been India's strategy.
Yes. I obviously, like most of us in the room, followed Prime Minister Carney's speech in Davos with a lot of attention. But bear in mind, Carney is speaking as the Prime Minister of an alliance country, of a treaty partner. And for a treaty partner, in a way, this is new ground that he's breaking. Whereas for a country like India, which never went into that kind of, treaty-based relationships or alliances, we've been in that frame of mind for a long time. That is part of the strategic autonomy thinking, which belief that I spoke to you about. So if you look at it, we have Quad, which is with the US, Japan, Australia, very important in the Indo-Pacific. We've had BRICS, originally with Brazil, Russia, China, then South Africa, now 5 more are added on. We have a number, if I actually count them. I think we have probably more than 20 of these trilateral or more than trilateral combinations. In fact, we just did one with Canada, with Mr. Kani, India, Australia, and Canada on a
You're
certain...
deepening your relationship with Brazil as well, aren't you?
Yes, yes, indeed. We have one with India, Brazil, South Africa. So we are as 3 developing democratic countries. So for us, this kind of coalition or working groups, call it what you would, but essentially an effective, practical, agenda-based coming together of countries on a regular basis. This has been very much the hallmark of Indian diplomacy now for about 2 decades.
I'm going to open it up for a question after this one for Minister Wadephul. What do you think of a world made up of spheres of influence? And what is your sphere?
Yeah, of course, our sphere is of course Europe, but I have to realize that there are powers who are trying to have that spheres of influence, and of course, in a way, we have to build up resilience in Europe against that. So that is a very good reason for us to look for these partners. And like India does have a lot of partners, so do we, as Europeans, as Germans, with a long-lasting relationship with Japan, a big friendship. I was just in Australia and New Zealand and visited Singapore and the Pacific Islands. I will spend my next longer visit to Latin America, so being in Brazil, Argentina, perhaps also Chile. So we have a lot of partners, and of course I would have to mention the African continent as well. But I think the new thing is, some years ago, and that was one of the first questions you raised here correctly, was, did you expect that very development? And I answered no, because some years ago, we firstly considered these countries as being members of the BRICS, and that is in a sort of alienated us from them, and that was wrong. So now we realize that, of course, we have a lot of differences with especially Russia. That has not to be underscored here. They are very, very fundamental. And also with China. But we have a lot of things in common with countries like India, like Brazil. And why not focusing on these common interests and common values? So this is, I think, the new view Europe and Germany is putting on the world.
It's very interesting. There was a question up there. Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is Dalal Erakat from Palestine. I want to touch upon the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the IMEC, which we did not hear today. It is framed as a platform for connectivity, stability, and shared prosperity. How does India envision IMEC contributing to a regional stability in a way that is inclusive of Palestine and the Palestinian rights and consistent with international law and the two-state solution, so that economic solutions and integration and the trade road competition that brings also Europe and Germany to the board do not proceed alongside political exclusion of the Palestinian rights? Thank you.
Well, you know, we have a long-standing position on Palestine, which you're familiar with. And when we embarked with a set of partners on the IMEC, the purpose of the IMEC is really to address connectivity, logistics issues, and improve the economy. So I would be careful sort of mixing up the two issues. The purpose of the IMEC is not to solve the Palestinian issue or to somewhere contribute or strengthen or so I do think each of those issues is important, but I would not take one as the solution for the other.
Is IMEC progressing? It's something that I think President Trump was quite excited.
Answer is kind of yes, but not at the pace at which people initially expected it to, which is understandable because there was a big conflict going on in the Middle East and everybody's attention was on that conflict. But what I do see, I mean, when I come to Europe, especially when I meet people, countries, governments, leaders, businesses from Mediterranean Europe, but not only from Mediterranean Europe, from Germany as well, from France, there's a big European interest in IMEC. There's a big Indian interest in IMEC. We are the two ends of it. Remember, this is the historical trade route of hundreds, if not thousands of years. So we are trying, yesterday, I think Chancellor Merz used this coming back from a vacation from history. I think when you come back from the vacation, you'll discover IMEC is also part of history, which you need to reinvent.
There's another question down there. Yeah.
Brankica Jankovic from Serbia, human rights expert. My question is for Minister Wadephul. You are also well known as credible and reliable leaders, and I cannot agree more what you quoted about predictability. And my question is, maybe for $1 billion, how to ensure, how to promote and ensure that predictability became a special value on the global level? How to do that? And what do you see? What was the biggest, maybe perhaps mistakes EU made last 2 years in relationship within the other partners?
Those are two big questions.
I think predictability, I think you have to give an example. In predictability, and you should work together with other partners who live for that very standard. And we have to defend what we called the international rules-based order, especially the UN system. So I would say if we are clear with that, and we work together with partners who are also predictable, I would say we bring more certainty to the world order, which is so much needed. And also we should address if this was violated. And this perhaps could be the task for the European Union to be more clearer in the future. There are some occasions, if I remember, if I look back the last 2 years, of course, where we could have been clearer. A good example, perhaps put it this way, was our reaction on, of course, the Greenland issue in the last few weeks, where Europe was absolutely clear where we are, and the Chancellor just reiterated it yesterday, that we are, of course, defending the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Denmark and of Greenland, as we were defending and are defending the sovereignty of Ukraine. So this, we cannot be divided on these issues, but we have to be clear and we have to be sustainable on these questions.
I think we can take one last question. Sorry, it's the gentleman at the back. Sorry.
Thank you. My name is Daisuke Kawai from Tokyo, Japan. My question is about the Quad. As a Foreign External Minister Jaishankar mentioned, last year the Quad summit was cancelled, and we haven't seen, such a strong unity among Quad members in the second Trump administration. Do you see possibly, or the Quad unity will be sustainable in the Trump second administration? Thank you.
Just a point of correction. I wouldn't say the Quad summit was cancelled because it was never specifically scheduled. It didn't take place. Yes, that's correct. But at the same time, I would point to the fact that the first meeting with Secretary Rubio held the day he became Secretary of State was the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. And then he did a meeting again in July. In Washington, for which all of us went. So we actually had 2 Quad foreign ministers meeting, and I want to assure you that the other parts of the Quad, the various mechanisms, all of those are going on. So the fact that the Quad did not take place at the summit level itself, I won't overread read it. So do stay tuned.
Thank you very much indeed for both of you, and we will be watching this budding relationship back at the FTA. Thank you.